the latest episode of Thoughts in the Greenhouse. I'm Renée Wills, co-founder and client lead for Brick City Greenhouse, and I'm joined here today by Sandra Graham-Mason, who is Senior Director of Oncology Marketing at Regeneron. Welcome, Sandra. And Renée Green, who is a repeat guest here on the show. She is a SVP Group Client Lead at Brick City Greenhouse. Today, we're gathered because we really wanted to focus on a topic that's of interest to all of us, and we think it's probably interest to most of you, which is the idea of personal branding and how we have a personal brand and how we lead through that. So, but when we talk about personal branding, I don't know, what exactly, how would we define that?
For me, when I think about personal branding, I think about the skills that each of us bring to the table and how that marries with the values that we hold. Because I think that those two things come together and really translate into how we show up each day, and how people receive us, right? How do they perceive their interactions with us? What are they taking away from that? And it kind of becomes your reputation in a way, if you really think about it.
I absolutely agree with that. And I think when you start to think about leadership, women, especially when we start to excel in our careers, there are going to be other people who look for us for guidance. And I think when you start talking about leadership in your brand, it really is that process of influence and how you can help to uplift others, and not necessarily just women, but also men. But I think in particular, when people are new in their careers and they're trying to find their way and they're looking for someone to emulate, that's a part of that personal branding that I think about. And I'm always in the back of my mind thinking about, the bench and who's coming behind me and how I might help support those individuals as well.
Well, it sounds like we've all given a little thought to what our personal brand is, but maybe that's not so obvious. Like when you think about a personal brand, how do we figure that out? I mean, I guess for me, self-reflection was key. Who am I, and being really deliberate about it, and not only thinking about it, but thinking about how I am in my best moments when I feel really good, and who am I not, or what am I in my maybe some of my worst moments that don't feel so good. And so like pivoting and leaning into more of the things that feel great and asking myself, what does that look like? And how does that feel to me? And then how does that feel and come across to others? So that's kind of like, for me, like one of the ways that I thought about it.
I also think about psychological capital in that, when you're talking to someone and your organization has their ways of working and their values, but you're also concerned about that human strength and what that can mean, whether it's the hope or resiliency, the optimism that you bring into the organization. I like to incorporate those kinds of attributes into what I'm doing because I think it's so important for us to really think about that and also live by that, because we work in stressful environments, and your tendency to revert back to who you would be under stress is what you're going to do. And we all know that. And there's research to support that. But if you're constantly thinking about that and knowing that the stress is going to come, how do you do that self-reflection, like you said, Renée, and really just take that beat, think about what you're doing and what you're saying and how that's going to be perceived, because the last thing you want is for someone to remember you when you're not necessarily at your best, and then trying to take ages to reverse that, because now that becomes who they remember you for, and you don't want that to be a part of your brand.
I totally agree with that. And I think just to build on it, I think part of, sort of that self-reflection piece and also collecting feedback, from peers and from folks that we're interacting with on a daily basis. Oftentimes, we have a perception of how we're delivering ourselves, whether it's in a good or a not so great moment. But also hearing back from folks around how that was received on their end, right? Because it's really multidimensional. It's not just how we view ourselves, but how others are experiencing us as well, that can help inform, sort of that brand, and even how we evolve as we move forward, because personal brands shouldn't be stagnant.
I love that. the idea that it's stagnant and evolving, I think we'll get to that in a couple seconds. I want to get into that. But one of the things that struck me as we're talking about the personal brand, like this isn't something that we make up. Our personal brand is who we are when we're at our best. It's our authentic self. And I think that's sort of the key, because I've had so many folks in my past try to influence me to be something that I'm not. And asking yourself, who are you in your best moments and some of your worst moments, but who are you? Instead of saying, well, in order to get ahead, this is who I need to become. Oh, I see that this works for this person. So instead, it's like having the unwavering faith that if we lean into who we are and we are consistently us, we are going to be differentiated from the pack, and we are going to be able to rise in leadership because we are bringing our personal brand and who we are in a consistent way. Our people, our clients, the people around us can count on us to be that way, just like Sandra was talking about, even in our worst moments, can count on us to be that shining star in some of the worst moments, can count on us in the best moments to motivate and lift everyone. So like, to me, I guess I wanted to bring to the party the idea that the authentic self is like is so important. When we talk about building our brand and who we are, we have to always stay true to who we are.
I agree with you. It's so important that we don't lose ourselves when we go to work. And now, I was having a conversation recently when I talked about, when I started my career, I felt like I had to be one person at work. And then when I got home, I was an absolutely different person. And it's not like I changed or, you become the superhero when you zip into a costume and then you take it off. Like, I'm not saying that at all. But I did feel that there were certain norms that we needed to be that we needed to adhere to in order to be, one, respected, two, considered for other opportunities or expansion and growth of responsibilities. And if you did not play the game, so to speak, then you really weren't a part of the club or you weren't going to be taken seriously. So how do you continue to reflect that? Yes, I am true to who I am. I know what value I bring to the organization. I know what value I bring to my friends and my family at home, but that doesn't mean that I have to separate that, because I feel with all of that diversity in knowledge and experience makes me a better person, well-rounded, and I bring those kinds of attributes to the organization and into my ways of thinking and how we're going to get work done. And when you think about that emotional contagion, that's what people are going to feed upon and really act and start to work with you to pull out that goodness. So I think, don't separate, be who you are, come as 100% all the time. And you shouldn't have to say, I'm going to choose when I'm going to be Sandra, I'm going to choose when I'm going to be Sandra, those kinds of things. So it doesn't matter, because I'm still the same person through and through. And that's who I want to be. And I think there's more of, I think what has happened in organizations, or probably from work globally, is that there's more of this sense of gratitude. We believe in the gratitude that we bring to the table. And I think we're in this space now where everybody is being honored and accepted for who they are. And that goes back to that gratitude. So that's what I think about when I start to think about these things.
So if we do the self-reflection, and all of us are on our different journeys along this path of career growth, and some of us may be starting out, some of us may have been on this path for a while, but evolution. We as people change, we grow, conditions change, situations change, and so evolution and change is unstoppable. It's something we need to embrace. But if we think about our personal brand, does that mean that needs to change as well? What do you think?
Well, I think it goes back to if we're talking about some of the values, right, that we all hold. I think that those sort of become the core, right, of who we are, and certainly values don't waver over time. As you mentioned, situations do. And so I think through those situations, we're evolving, we're gaining new skills, new way to handle situations. And through those sometimes tough times where we learn a lot, we leverage and we lean on those values to really bring us through in a positive way. And so I think that as our skills and our learning evolves, we take those values with us, and it helps us to evolve that personal brand.
I agree. And, you think about emotions or you think about moods, your mood can change, your emotion can change, and they're different. However, they are super important to how we go about our personal day. And when you dig deep and pull through some of those emotions, and you should be changing because you are growing. And that's the whole idea of evolution, is to change. And you have that sustainability. You're going to sustain yourself, but you should be growing and evolving because that just makes us better. I think when you're stagnant and you don't change, then you're not going to continue to evolve with society. You're not going to evolve with your employers. You're not going to evolve with your friends. So, and if you do that, you're going to be left behind. And we talk about not leaving people behind. And if you don't embrace that and embrace that change and a culture that is now what we're living in, then you're not going to be valuable. So you don't lose who you are as the essence, but you just, to me, make yourself better.
I love the idea of making yourself better. It's kind of one of my themes, but what if externally you're getting pressure and you're getting pressure, let's say from your management in a way that is inconsistent or expects you to be somebody who is not consistent with your personal brand and who you are. I mean, have you been in that situation?
That's a tough one because I could say yes, I've certainly been in that situation. And, that's where when we talk about that psychological safety and how you might not necessarily perform in a way because of the anxiety and the pressures that you're feeling because it doesn't align with who you are as an individual. And I have found myself in situations where I really had to take that moment of reflection to say, do I feel that there's an opportunity for change? Can this person's perception of me evolve and they see the goodness that I bring? Or is this a dead end and I need to move on? Because I've had that situation happen where I've had someone who made a comment to me that in today's society would not be acceptable at all. But I knew at that moment that I was not going to move. I had reached my ceiling within this particular individual. And I knew that there was no way around that because they were commenting on where I chose to be educated, not understanding, I was the first one in my family to go to college. I didn't necessarily know that I should have been going to certain schools, that all schools weren't considered equal. But I was told by that individual, you're good, but you didn't go to a good school. And so, that pride that I felt as an individual, being the first person in my family to go to college and graduate, to then have someone try to diminish that and cut me down was something I said, I can't accept that. That does not align with me nor my personal goals. So I took that and said, okay, I can go work elsewhere and be given a fair shake and have that opportunity to really grow and expand and show them what I can do. And I did that. But oftentimes I do feel that there are opportunities within your own organization where you can talk. You might need the help of a sponsor or a mentor who can help you make some changes so that these individuals who are in this decision-making capacity can then see your values so that you can help change and move on. But I don't think you necessarily have to leave every time something bad happens, but I do feel you need to take that personal reflection and figure out, is this something that I can fix or not?
I think equally, it's something to consider as folks are experiencing or exploring job or career change, right? Through that interview process, trying to assess the cultural fit, right, with the new organization or a new manager, and making sure that through that interview process, it's not just about you sharing, sort of your personal brand, but getting to know that individual as well, especially if it's someone that you'll be working with from a team perspective, because those moments, will come about where, you may be getting pressure to sort of, behave or respond in a certain way. And you want to be able to assess those things up front, before joining an organization.
Yeah, I have a personal story where I had a supervisor. I won't name companies or name names, but I had a supervisor who encouraged me to really go very aggressively after a point. And so we were in a medical legal regulatory review meeting, and I had been coached to very aggressively go after the point. And going after things and winning was in my DNA. Like that's part of who I am. But I was uncomfortable with going at it at all cost. But I knew my boss expected that. And so I did. I went after that point so hard that somebody ran out of the room crying. And I guess why I'm bringing this up is because there are defining moments in our lives which make it clear where we do our self-reflection. And the story you shared, Sandra, about, do you leave the job or not leave the job? Like, to me, that was a defining moment of, I am not this person. I am not going to do this. I do not want to be in this organization. I do not want to work for this individual. I cannot be this. And standing up for who we really are, even in the face of enormous pressure, I actually came out of it really empowered. And that empowerment it stays with me today. Like I think some of the toughest moments in our lives can be some of the most empowering and where the biggest lessons come from.
I agree with you, and kudos to you that you were able to say, I'm not that person and I'm not doing that. And, and thanks for sharing that, because it is not easy to talk about when you weren't the best, but you were coached to do that and you performed well because you wanted to do that for your manager at the time. But, being true to yourself and knowing what your personal brand is and knowing what you align with and what your values are so important. And you do learn your best lessons coming out of that, because it's probably at a really low point where you have to make that call for yourself. But when you become that phoenix rising and you come out of it, it's just the best experience. And you can always take that and teach somebody else so that they do not fall into that same category or situation that you found yourself in. But thank you for sharing that.
So let's talk a little bit about, we've been focusing on the professional identity, and Sandra, you touched on the personal identity as well. And, maybe there used to be a world where there was, and maybe it still is for some folks, this is my personal life and this is my work life. And I think the hybrid work environment and the work from home and all of that stuff has maybe made it a little easier or maybe made it a little harder to blend the people that we are. If you're staying true to your personal brand, if you think about it, that's kind of who you are personally and who you are professionally. And so it doesn't separate work and life. Home life is life. It's life. And I find it most empowering, most enriching when I show up every day in both spaces as me.
I agree. And yeah, I touched upon it briefly, but it's definitely a conversation I have had with other people that I've spoken to, and women, men, people of color, and especially in people of color, where we feel, and this is probably something that other people who are listening to this of color might feel the same or have had this similar conversations, where we feel, we go to work, we are definitely wearing a different hat and we're talking differently. We're not listening to the same kind of music. I was told early on in my first job out of college, like, you need to understand what Caucasian society does and you need to embrace it. But she says no one's going to want to know what you do as an African-American person at home. So I was told from the start that I needed to assimilate and learn a white culture, so to speak, so that I could fit in. And then I had to be that different person in the office anytime I was in front of a client. And then when I got home, I could be who I was and the things that I experienced. So I was told that right from the start. And as a youngster, early 20s, of course, that's what I did, because I respected this individual. But then as evolution has occurred and you get more experience of working, you understand that you don't need to do that. You can be someone who is very interested in a lot of things, which I am. And that was a good learning experience for me to learn and explore and expand my mind. But being able to just understand other cultures, other foods, other ideas, to me is what elevates everyone else and makes us the melting pot that this country is supposed to be. So I'm excited about that. And, I just hope anyone listening to this, please do not ever say something like that to someone. Don't encourage them to lose their authenticity, because that's truly why you hired them in the first place, because you like what they brought to the table. So don't make them change it.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it makes me think about, sort of a pre-hybrid and pre-remote work environment where, at the time I was a new mom and I very much felt like I needed to compartmentalize, right? When I went to work, I was no longer a mother. I was there to be an employee and to do a great job and deliver for my clients and my teams. And it felt like I wasn't really able to share a lot of that, in the office in terms of some of the stresses or, new experiences I was going through, because this was the work environment, right? And you were here to kind of do your job. But I think being in a hybrid and now a remote environment completely, it allows people a little bit more of a glimpse into each other's lives and the totality of who they are. And I think allows each of us to just appreciate, the whole being, right? As opposed to just having to compartmentalize and be either, the parent or the worker. It's now we are, just one person kind of bringing all of that to the table. And I think it also has allowed people to have a bit more empathy for one another, in terms of just what life brings. And, this is a 24-hour day with a lot of things that are going on for everyone. And I think it's helped create just a lot more of that empathy and authenticity, right? In terms of sharing just who we are with one another.
Perhaps the best thing that we can do for the next generation of leaders is to be a great example of living our authentic selves and not listening to the outside influences that try to shape us in other directions, but listening to that inner compass that says who we are and who we want to be and living into that. I truly believe that the path to success is that. I think all of us, if we do a little soul searching and figure out who we are and are that consistently, and yes, it does mean that some days we need to show up at our better selves when maybe it's a tough day or whatever, but like really reaching and being our best selves and growing, that is the path to professional success.
I
I really
100%
believe in
agree.
it.
I agree with you, and I don't mean to speak over you, but that you just made me think about that self-motivation, and self-reflection. It's like all of these things that we need to do. There's every self-help book around to help you get there. But when you self-monitor and you realize, you know what, this is what's really the essence of what I'm doing. And yes, I know when I need to step it up, this is a really important presentation, or this is something that's so true to my beliefs, and I'm doing this for a patient. I know I need to ramp it up. I don't need someone to tell me that. I know that, and I'm going to do that. And I think that, like you said, Renee, that's where that 100% authentic person comes into place and into being. And that's what people are going to find infectious, and they're going to want to jump on that bandwagon with you. So that's the excitement that I like to bring to work, into anything that I do, whether it's at work or home. It's me.
So any sort of tips for our audience maybe they're starting out, and I think we've given some good tips along the way, but anything we haven't talked about when you think about being your authentic self and living into your personal brand and being able to be that consistently, is there anything else that we really want to share? I guess one thing that I'll just kind of jump in and share is that sometimes you might need to create boundaries. And it's okay to create boundaries and to say, who you are and what you're willing to say and do. And that's, to me, part of your personal branding. You don't have to be a yes machine. You don't have to, in order to be successful, you don't have to say yes to everything. You can create boundaries and ask for what you want and stand for what you want and be successful on your own terms.
I had a very important person who's on this call share that with me about being true to who you are and not being afraid. Be bold. And that was some of the best advice I'd ever received. And thank you, Renee, for that, because I was able to talk about, fears that I might have, or something that I don't want to reveal because I'm afraid it's going to be held against me, at another time. And that I'll always be branded as that thing that I was afraid of. But honestly, that just helped me to evolve and help me to form the relationship with my management team to catapult me even further. So thank you for that advice, because I was bold and not disrespectful in any way, but just being bold and standing up for myself, where I was pushing and saying, this is what I need to do. And I know that I can do this. And I need you to believe in that, and giving them the facts, the data points to suggest why I'm saying this and to prove that I've done this and that it's, I should be given that opportunity. And if it weren't for people like Renée just giving up that kind of advice, I don't believe I would have done it. And the results were fast. That a change came about really fast. So I was really excited about that. So I would say, don't be afraid of fear. And if you don't try, you're not going to get anything. And just be bold for yourself.
And let's all encourage each other to be bold, because we can do it. And it's in our power every day to have an interaction with somebody where you're encouraging them to be their best self. It's the best thing in the world. Well, I want to thank you, Sandra and Renée, for coming on here and sharing a little bit today with our audience. And for those of you who are listening or watching, we want to thank you. And if you're interested in hearing more tips for healthcare marketers, make sure that you like or follow us and stay tuned for more.